The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he had sat down, his disciples came to him. He began to teach them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you, and utter every kind of evil against you falsely because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Heaven is not a reward for good behavior. Sometimes it's been presented to us that way, but behavior, being good, isn't the primary thing in God's eyes. If it were, we would all be in trouble. What is the primary thing? It's identity. It's realizing who we are. Behavior then has to come after that. But who we are is what John described in his letter. We are the children of God. We are God's family. The saints whom we celebrate today are the ones who realized that, so much so that it became the center of their lives. Now, let's face it. If God is who and what we profess God to be, God has to be at the center of our lives. Because if we put something else at the center of our lives, we've got a false center. As St. Augustine said, "You've made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." So, we don't come here and gather as Catholics, come to church, celebrate the Eucharist. We don't do this in order to kind of give God his due. We do this in order to reinforce in our own consciousness our awareness of who and what we are, that we are God's children. And we reinforce our identity as being God's children by our reception of the Holy Eucharist. We receive Jesus, the Son of God, into our lives through receiving Holy Communion. And that reinforces us in the identity of who and what we are. The saints have reached their fulfillment in this reality of who they are in relation to God. They're not just passively receiving a reward, but they are actively continuing what they were living for here on this earth. That is, living for the well-being of God's family, the well-being of God's people. What that means is they are our brothers and sisters who are passionately trying to get us where they are. And so we can count on their help. We can count on their intercession. We can count on their prayers. We can learn from their example. Because their example, when they lived here, was not so much a matter of an example of good behavior, but rather an example of what it is like to live as members of God's family. That's why when Jesus gives us the constitution of his kingdom, which is God's family, he doesn't do it in the form of going up on the mountain and giving us 10 commandments. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do that. That's kind of taken for granted. We've already got that. But what he does is give us the attitude of happiness that is our gift from God. We are blessed because God has given us the destiny of being members of his family. And so he tells us what it is like to be a member of his family, to be poor in spirit, to mourn. That means, I think, to separate ourselves to at least a certain degree from the empty pleasures of this world. To be meek, which means to be open and receptive to the movement of God. Hungering and thirsting for righteousness means that we want to bring about change in our world for righteousness, for justice, by being the change, bringing about in our own lives the change that we seek. Clean of heart means transparent, like pure, clear water, able to allow the sunlight to come through. Peacemakers, bringing about reconciliation rather than hatred and alienation among people. And guess what? He assures us that if we are these things, being like him, the world that wants to organize itself around material things and wealth and gain and greed and power, they're not going to like us. They're going to reject us. And so he concludes with, "Blessed are the persecuted for the sake of righteousness." And then he even goes so far as to make that into the second person. "Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you falsely because of me." That's when be glad and rejoice. That's when you will be participants in God's kingdom. We often make our examination of conscience looking at the 10 Commandments and wondering, okay, where did I break this? Where did I violate that? Where, and so on. I think it would be better if we were actually to take the Beatitudes as our examination of conscience. Do I really make these values close to the heart of my life? Through living these values, do I really allow God into my life? That is the secret of God's kingdom. That's what it means to live as his beloved children, members of his family.